Right, well, welcome everybody. I'm gonna just start off by saying when we in the past, and I'm talking quite a long time ago, when we've asked for, have you got any suggestions and things like that, sometimes we don't get very many. Okay. At this time, we were absolutely brilliant, quite inundated with lots of good hints and tips. I'm going to say that a lot of them were good, quick keystrokes. And obviously over Zoom, that can be quite difficult to demonstrate. But they will be followed up with in the quick reference guide, which we're going to produce and send out within the next few days. But there were some amazing I think amazing hints and tips, and so I've picked out a few. I think the other thing is that, and I really would like to stress this, we are in exalted company here today. I know, I look around, at the list of people, and I know how many experts we've got. So I'm kind of guessing that I might be showing things that some of you will already know. Okay, so please forgive me. I'm not going to dwell on them, by the way, and I'm not going to sort of, it's not a full training session. It is a hints, tips, and here we go. And, you can read more about it if you want to. And of course, if you do need any more information, then please email us and we'll get back to you. So that's fine. But as I said, I know I've worked with quite a few of you or come across you in professional life, and I know how talented and good you all are at PowerPoint and Excel and Word. So as I said, forgive me, but I can tell you there was a couple of things and I was like, oh wow, I did not know you could do that. So I'm hoping I'll get at least a wow from everybody. That's the main thing. So excellent, good. So I'm going to share my screen and just start off with some PowerPoint stuff. Okay. Before I do that, I would like to, sorry, let me just minimize that. I would just like to say as well that these are all the people that have responded. If your name isn't on there and because it came in this morning, I apologize, but I will update it afterwards. But you can see that we had, I know there's a few of the people already here, Roz, Teresa, Fiona, I know I've seen all of your names. So thank you very much for your contribution. As I said, some great keystrokes, but certainly some great features as well. So, okay. So I'm going to start, just without further ado, I'm going to move on and do a few bits and pieces. One thing I'm not going to do, by the way, is I am not going to say who put in the suggestion. One of the reasons for that is because nearly every suggestion, and it's kind of why I picked some of them, was actually suggested by at least one person. So it got a bit confusing to say, well, that was from those two, but they also suggested that. But, as I said, thanks to everybody that's contributed. Great. So I'm going to start off with the picture, removing the background and the picture format. And again, most people do know that you can do this, but I just want to, again, just
put in a ticket for me.
A little bit better than that, yeah.
Sorry, somebody's got a mic on. Getting a lot of feedback. And do we know who it is?
Okay, yeah, sorry, I'm still not looking up.
Would anybody mind if I mute everybody for a second? Because we've got a lot of feedback. Okay. All right. Okay. And you can unmute themselves as we go along if we need to. That's brilliant. Okay. Good. Okay. So the idea, obviously, of this is I have found a perfect picture that I want to use, but funnily enough, I don't want the ruler in it and I don't want the background. Okay. So when I do this and sorry, I've got my, bear with me 1 second. I have got, that's what I need to do. Okay. I had the Zoom menu was across the top and I couldn't see where my other menus were. Okay, so I'm going to try and remove the background from this picture. Now, what I would stress is if your picture has a very similar background to the main body of the picture, I'm sure some of you have already discovered this, it doesn't work very well. But with something like this, where it's very definite, I think it does work quite well. So I'm going to go off to the picture format and I'm going to remove the background. And you'll see when I do that, this is what it's trying to remove at the moment. And obviously the grey area is exactly what it says. It is a grey area. So it can't decide, because there was kind of a shadow or something, whether to remove that or not. Now, what I can do is if I select mark areas to remove and just draw a line down here, and I think this is what's quite clever, it assumes if you want to do it on that side, that you want to do it on the other side as well. So now, if I say keep all the changes, I've just got the picture without the background on it. Okay, so obviously, as I said, when you've got a picture with a similar background, sometimes it can be quite difficult to get around that. But this is much better if you've got something which is definite rather than kind of trying to crop it, because I can now use that as a separate picture. Okay. Great, moving on. This is one I love, and I know it was done many years ago by Julie McCarthy at one of the Document Excellence days, but it's one that a lot of people actually forget. What it is the eyedropper. Little syringe, if you like. And the idea here is that, you know, if you perhaps have a logo from a company or a particular picture, and you want to match the background of your picture or the background of your object, the background, you know, maybe the text of the object, but you don't know exactly what color it is, particularly if it is a proper picture, then you can use the eyedropper to complete that, okay, or fill it in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this document, and actually what I want to do is I want to change the color of the text. So you can see if I come down here, select eyedropper, and just click where on the color I want, you'll see it changes it. Okay, what I might want to do now is actually fill it with the text color. So if I now go to text fill, select the eyedropper, see changes. Now I've got, obviously I didn't pick the right thing there, but you can see the way it is. So you can do it on objects, you can do it on text, and pick the color that you actually want. Much better than trying to keep going through the color palette and seeing if you can match it up or not. Okay. And again, thank you for whoever put that one through, because it reminded me about it and I'd completely forgotten. Okay, again, we've got a keystroke now, but it is, I think, a very useful one. And I know a lot of people do use this, but just to remind us about it. So if I press Control D while I've got a slide selected in the thumbnail view at the left-hand side, I get a duplicate of that slide. It's no different from copying it. The difference is I don't have to paste it as well. Okay, so I'm going to undo that for a second. But where I think this is useful is when I'm using it on an object. Okay, so rather than copy and paste, if I do a Control D and then move this to where I want it to go, here, when I do Control D again for duplicate, you'll see it puts it relatively to where my first object was. So in other words, it's allowing me to lay things out, but I know that the distance and the spacing, etc., is the same on all of those. Okay, doesn't stop you then, you know, lining them up in a different way if you need to, but I think it's quite a useful way of being able to line things up. Okay. Any questions so far? Ange, would you be able to keep an eye on the chat for me?
Sorry, Claire, once you had selected Control D, did you just repeat that and do Control D, and it went in that way? Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Let me show you again. Okay, so first one, I do a Control D. I know that's what I mean. That's where it's quite difficult to see with the keystrokes, obviously. Yeah. But and then I'm moving it with the up and the, you know, the cursor keys at the moment. But obviously you can do it with the mouse as well. Yeah. When I've got it in the right place, then I just press Control D again, and then press Control D again.
Super. I don't think I've ever done it more than once, so that's interesting. Thank you. Yeah.
So it keeps it going. Brilliant. Excellent. Okay, good. Any other questions on that at the moment? So they're all quite straightforward, and as I said, I mean, you know, they're really quick things to show, but I think hopefully they're very useful. This is another one that I really like. Okay. Sometimes what happens is you put a shape in, and you assign colors and maybe gradient to it and everything else, and you think, actually, do you know what, it doesn't look very nice as a triangle. I think it wants to be a star. So what I can do now using the shape format is I can actually select edit shape, select change shape, and then literally change it to any shape that I want. It will then keep the color, any variations. I've got a shadow around this, and obviously any text that is within it, but it will change the shape without having to redo the whole thing again. Okay, again, another really very quick one that you can see the way it works. It's interesting actually, because I think with the PowerPoint ones, they are a lot quicker. It's almost like the quick win with PowerPoint rather than a couple of the features they're going to do in Excel. Okay. All right, another of my favorites. Okay, last one wanted to be a star. This one wants to be a circle. Okay, now we know that I mean, and again, I'm sure a lot of you do know this, but when I draw a shape, and I'm going to do maybe a rectangle. Okay, as I draw it, obviously I get a rectangle, but actually if I want it to be a square, or in the case of an ellipse, a circle, what I can do is I can draw that. Let's do it with here. And at the moment, I'm pressing my shift key. And if I draw it, I definitely get a square. Okay, so I know the measurements on that one. If I do an ellipse and I hold the shift key down, you'll see I definitely get a circle. Okay, and it even works with a triangle, where I definitely get an equal triangle rather than having to worry about the measurements of it. Okay, so all that is, as I said, is just holding the shift key down. Okay. Right now, I know that lots of firms and companies I've worked with do this, that they have a slide deck. And what they do is they put all of the slides in the template. So when you open the template up, it's got 30 different slides in it. And you have to delete the ones you don't want and use the ones you do. And one of the things that I've tried to encourage people to use, and I know a couple of firms who do use it very successfully, is rather than do that, what they do is they have in their templates, they have their cover page and a bullet slide. And then when you want your default, maybe the map, maybe the firm's addresses, maybe a graph layouts, that kind of thing, then what you would do is rather than open up the template and copy it, what I would recommend is using reuse slides. So you would put all your standard layouts and slides in there. And when I click on that, and I'm going to open this document here, doesn't really matter which one, you can see all of my layouts and all my, look, I've got a housekeeping slide and I've got my safety slide and all of those standard things that you might want to use, and layouts. I've got a chart slide, I've got tables. And then when I know when I want to use one of them, I just click and it gets inserted. Okay, so I don't have to worry about, have I removed all the ones I don't want? And what if I want it twice? You know, I can just go back and put in another one. Okay, so again, I think that's the sort of thing that it's so much easier, and it means that I think it's easier because I think you end up with your layouts. It's easy enough to add another one to it without having to worry about working on the template. You just add it to that deck, if you like. Okay. Good. Okay. Again, I know some people prefer to do it the other way, but I think it's another option. Okay. Now, some of you will have attended our accessibility event that we ran the other week. And it is something that we're going to try and concentrate on this year. It's quite a big theme for us to talk about accessibility, what Microsoft's doing with it, and you know, the hints and the tips, if you like, around how you work with accessible documents. And what I'm going to show you here is just a couple of little things. Okay. When you check the accessibility, it looks at an awful lot of information, much more than it ever used to. But I know that Sherry and Richard showed this at the last event, so I'm just going to show a couple of little bits that we've been talking about since. Okay. When I want to check the accessibility, if I go off to review, and you'll see there's an option here, check accessibility. If you are on the enterprise version of Office, by the way, and I'm not rich enough to do that in my little room at home, you will also get a check reading order. Okay, if you are doing it on a different version, this one, you can check the reading order, and I'll explain that in a second, but you access it through the selection pane. So again, I'll talk about that, but just bear in mind, and when you get the crib sheet, you will have I will make sure you've got both options so you can tell which one is which. Okay, right, so I'm going to check the accessibility. Okay, actually what I'm going to do is close down reuse slides first. Okay, so you can see what happens. It comes up, and you know there's various things. I think you'll guess which one is the hard to read text contrast. Okay, on this particular one here. Okay, but there's other things like there is some objects here that don't have a description. So I can go off and I can say, right, this lady here doesn't have a description, so I could add the description if I want to. And the great thing is when you check the accessibility is it actually tells you what the recommended action is, but also how you do it. Okay, so pointing to the objects. Okay, excuse my typing at the moment. Okay, I could go to the next one. Okay, right, well with these I'm actually not going to put anything on these, because all I'm going to do with this one perhaps is put on a general description of the slide itself, maybe through the title, and say the objects on this are used to describe circles, whatever it is. Okay, so you don't have to do everything it recommends. Okay, I'm not going to do the triangle one for a second. This one again is quite difficult because on this table, which was our thank you table, I don't actually have a header row. So what it's saying is, you know, a header row for the table does describe exactly what that table is about. You know, maybe the headings or whatever it is. So I've got a bit of a problem with that one. However, you'll also notice that in this option, same slide, I've got a missing slide title. And they do recommend, obviously, that when you're working with the accessibility, that you do put a slide title on it. All right. Now, I don't know whether anybody uses outline view, but you can see that what it's done is it's taken me straight into outline view. So if I want to, I could click over here and put the title in. But the problem I'm going to have is that I can't fit a title on this slide. Okay, so what I'm going to do just for a second is I'm going to go back to my normal view because it's easier to see, and come over here for the checking the accessibility. Okay, go off here, turn it back on again, and then when I check the review and I go off to check the accessibility again, what I also get here is an option to do one of two things. I can either add the slide title, which I don't want to do, or I can add a hidden slide title. And I think, again, this is a really clever option, because what it does is it puts it above the slide. So now I can type in there, this is the table that says thanks. Okay, so it won't show on the slide, but it would actually be read out through obviously the reader. So again, I think that's a really clever option, because obviously you do want to keep that going. Okay. Hard to read text context, when we talked about that one before, brings you up the fill and so on, and you can change it. And obviously it seems to like that one. I'm not sure, but hey, it seems to work. Use of merged or split cells. Now, again, this is quite a difficult one, because in this instance, I do want that merged cell. But obviously, depending on what the table is, that could confuse people. But because I've got my hidden title up here, I don't think that's necessarily going to be a problem, but it's warning you just in case it would be. Okay. And then the last but not least, and this is what's different if you've got the enterprise version, is the reading order is wrong. So what that's saying is that when I look at all these slides, when you get the read when you want it to be read, you want them to be read in the right order. You know, there's no point in coming over to this slide here. Where are we on this one? Or this one, and having you know, a piece of text, him and that, before the actual title. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go off and we're actually going to verify the object order. And as I said, in this version of PowerPoint, it will take me to the selection pane. In other versions, it would take you to what's called the reading order pane. The principle is exactly the same and the functionality is exactly the same. So let's go off to this one. It's probably better to have a look at it. Okay, so I obviously want the title to be first. So all I do is move it up. Okay. Do I want the oval or the text box next? Well, that's obviously that's fine. I'm going to leave that in that order. And I don't want the footer to be read out. So I'm just going to hide it. Okay, so again, it's really easy to choose which bits are read, and which bits aren't. So let's do this one as well. Again, title first. Okay. And then I've probably got the text boxes because of the way it works in the wrong order. Okay, but let's do that one. You can see what I'm getting at though. Again, obviously, let's do 7, okay, and 8. Oops, go too far. 9 and 10. That'll do. And then we'll remove the placeholder again. Okay. Now, the point there, of course, is what do you want it to read? Now, you can obviously put in alternative text for a lot of these things. You can also double click and type in what you want it to say. So this is a duplicate. Okay. So again, obviously, you'll see that it's applying that text to those objects. Okay. So, you know, to actually check how accessible your presentations are, and I think it's, you know, becoming more and more important, and obviously it doesn't take an awful lot of time. One of the things that I think, again, we've had some discussions about, and I know this was brought up at the last event, was this idea of how much text do you put in. And I think you really need to use your judgment on that as to whether, you know, if it's just going to be read out, that's fine. But if it's actually needs to be descriptive, then you're going to put a little bit more text in. Okay. Okay. Any questions at all? No, happy with that? Is there anything in the chat?
We've got some nice conversations going on in the chat.
Excellent. Okay. I can't read both. I'm just going through them, but oh, okay. Anything that's jumped out at you, Angela?
No, but it is great for people to keep an eye on it, because you know, one of the questions was, just let me scroll it back up to it. Does the colour contrast take into account colour blindness? And then we got a few people saying, yes, it does, because I didn't know the answer to that one either. No,
and we can save the chat at the end as well, and I can, any links or anything that I put in there, then I'm happy to, obviously we can put those in with the quick reference guides. One of the reasons I didn't finish it off completely, because I thought there might be a few bits of useful information in the chat as well, so we'll do that. Okay, excellent, good. Okay, right, we're not doing Word today, but I'm actually going to just swap to Word for a second. That's PowerPoint done. So I'm hoping there was something in there that everybody went, well, at least one person said, great, that's really good. And what I want to do now is, again, I said about keystrokes, and then there's so many of them, but actually what I want to do now is look at a keystroke that every single person I've shown this to hasn't known about it. So I'm hoping this is one that people will like. My husband, I showed him yesterday, and he's come in 3 times today and said, I used that keystroke. I used it. So he was quite happy. What it is you hold the Windows key down and press V. And what that does is it gives you access to the clipboard in any application. So if I now want to copy something into Word, you'll see it just brings it in. And if it's from Word or it's formatted, it will bring it in with the format as well. So no matter how many times I copy something, do another one. Now
just quickly, you're not showing Word at the moment.
Oh, sorry. Hang on.
That's okay.
My fault. Hang on a sec. Okay.
I didn't want to interrupt you there.
No, that's fine. Excellent. Good. Okay. All right. sorry, my fault. Okay, so Windows V, and you'll see that what it does is it brings up your clipboard. So no matter how much you've put on there, you'd be able to scroll up and down and then put in what you want. And if I do something else, I now want to copy that. Oops, do that a bit. Okay. When I then press Windows V, you'll see that's in there as well. Okay, it's a really good, quick, simple one. And obviously what you can do is you can remove some. And I know there were ways to do this before, but it's just such a simple keystroke. So that's why we like it. And if you finish with it all, you can clear them all as well. Okay, good.
Can't see that, Claire.
Sorry?
We can't see a clipboard.
That's really strange. Try it yourself, because I think sometimes what it does is because I'm not, I'm only sharing that screen. That's probably what it was. Let me see if I can just change that.
Claire, it's because you're just sharing the application.
Yeah, it is.
not
It
the whole
is.
screen.
Yeah. No, I know absolutely. But hang on a sec. Let's see if that's any. Is that better? Can you see it now?
Yes.
That's much
Yeah,
better.
excellent. Sorry, my apologies. So, yeah. So again, Windows V, and it brings them all up. Okay. So yeah, we liked that one. And what I was saying was that if you click on the ellipse button, you can pin them. So if it's something you copy often, you can pin it and it will always be at the top. You can delete individual ones, or you can clear it all. Okay. And you'll notice that if you clear it all, it doesn't clear your pinned ones. It just clears everything else. Okay. So I quite like that. I think it's very useful. Okay. And when you click off, and it's great because obviously you can swap from one application to another. Okay. Okay, right, let's move on to Excel then. Okay, now, again, a lot of these features, awful lot of them you may know, but there was one or two things that I thought were really, really useful. Okay, so let's make a start. So first one is, and I'm sure everybody knows this, but I'm showing this for a purpose, okay, that if I drag that across, obviously it's going to fill in the days of the week. Okay, so, and if you put MON, it's going to do MON and shorten it, obviously. Okay. A keystroke, okay, which is Alt and the plus key. Okay, and when you do Alt and plus, it automatically does an equal sum. It's just like using the auto sum button, but it's a really quick way of being able to do it. Okay, now this is the one I really like. Okay, so my little fill handle, which I use to do the days of the week. Okay, if I point to that and double click, what it does is it fills the formula right the way down to the bottom of my list. So for very, very long lists where you have to write a formula, I think that's a really great, simple way of doing it. Okay, and it doesn't just work with equal sum, by the way. It does actually work with other formulas, etc. as well. Okay, good. Okay, right. Let me move that up. Okay. Again, this, I'm sure that you all know that you can format the date in different formats, obviously, just like you can with numbers and that type of thing. Well, what I'm going to do is I am going to do that. Now I'm going to come into number format. And what I want to do is I want to make sure, let's select that one, sorry, custom. And I'm going to do this one as 4 days, the full day, just a single digit or double digit, depending on what it is, and the month. Okay, don't want the year for this one. Okay. And what I then do is, instead of just using the fill handle on its own, okay, which goes up, and that's fine, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and use the fill handle. And when you do that and you release it, you'll see there's an option there to fill weekdays. So what it will do is it will miss out the Saturday and the Sunday. So again, if you're trying to do something with a work calendar or a work element, that can be a really useful thing to do. Okay. Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to do document list in a minute. Okay. Right, now I know this says remove duplicates, but I'd like to do something else on it first of all. Okay. This was suggested by probably about 12 of those people. It's such a good feature, and I'm sure that, again, I'm pretty certain that most of you will actually know it, but just in case, it is a very useful one. I thought for a while when I first used this that you could only do it if it was in the cell next to what you were doing, but it isn't. What it is called flash fill, and what it does is it looks around the spreadsheet to actually find things matching to what you've said, and then almost like copying what you've done. So let me show you what I mean. I want to do, I work for a particular law firm, and I want to now produce a list of those people's email addresses. Okay, so I'm going to put in katie.windsor at law, sorry, what's going on? At lawfirm.com. Okay, and press return. Okay, now when I use the data menu, okay, which is up here, okay, and you'll see that I have an option called flash fill, and when I click on that, you'll see immediately it's filled the whole list with the people's names and copied the email address. Okay, so again, with anything like that, if it's you know, email addresses or just even the company name, something along those lines, it would actually flash fill it for you. Okay, and again, as I said, I know a lot of you have used that already, but because it was so popular, I thought I couldn't leave that one out. Okay, another one that was really popular was dealing with duplicates. And I think, again, this is a really important one. In this list, I know that there are duplicates in it, but obviously sometimes if you've got a huge list, and particularly if it's been imported from somewhere else, it's really difficult to actually work out, you know, you sort them and you have to delete them and so on. So you'll see that there is an option here called remove duplicates. When I click on that, it brings up my dialog box, and it says, well, here you go. These are all of the fields you've got. Which ones do you want to check for duplicates? It's picked up that I have got data headers. Obviously, you would turn that on or off, depending on whether you have or you haven't. In this instance, I'm going to use them all. But actually, quite often, what you would possibly want to do is maybe even turn the first name and the last name off. Certainly, maybe turn the first name off. The one thing that is definitely going to be different here is the email addresses, okay? Because obviously people can't have the same email address. So once I've done that and I click on OK, and off it will go, 14 duplicates found and removed. There are now 41 unique records left. And when I click on that, it's got rid of them all for me, okay? So again, it's something that can save an awful lot of time. Okay, and right, so moving on from there, again, I think this is something that is underused and that people forget about. Not filtering, because lots and lots of people use filtering on a daily basis. What I did find out that there is a keystroke to display the filters, and it's actually Control-Shift-L. So when you press Control-Shift-L, your filters appear. Okay, just a nice quick one. And as I said, all the keystrokes that people suggested will be in the quick reference guide. Now, what I want to have a look at is, again, things like the number filters. Okay, and I think, again, people don't use this enough. They do complicated formulas to try and find it out and stuff like that. So what I want to know who the top 10 earners are, or top 10 people with expenses are in this instance, in my list. And when I click on top 10, okay, I can change that. I could actually say, let's have a look at the bottom 10, or I could say, let's have a look at the top 5. And when I click on OK, it will display them for me. So I know that it's picked out those top 5. And because it's a filter, I'm not playing around with the list. It's just obviously, you know, filtering it out for me to use. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, just Let's do clear the filter for a minute, and then we get our whole list back. And I'm going to do a number filter here. And we'll say, right, who is above the average? Okay. These are the people who were above the average for their expenses, but that could be above average age, it could be above average salary, and so on. Okay. Again, I think really useful because it's a quick, easy way of being able to do it. You do also get text filters as well, just to mention that. Okay. So everybody that begins with an A, for example, or you could say between A and C. So again, it's worth having a play around with those to see, you know, particularly if you do kind of like human resources lists or client lists or, you know, billing lists or anything along those lines. Okay. Right, now, I think I really like this feature, and again, this is something I didn't actually know you could do, so bear with me if you did, but I really like this. I'm going to go off to my desktop, and I know I have been asked in the past by law firms, by you know, even the companies I've worked for, to actually produce a list of documents which are in a folder, and I want them in Excel so I can sort them, I can filter on them, I can make comments on them, I can assign them to people, whatever it is. Okay. And I know in the past I have sat there with my document list on one screen and my Excel spreadsheet on another, and I've copied them over one at a time. And you know, if it's a really long list, that's obviously going to take a lot of time. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to do a Control A. And when I do, again, it is a keystroke, but obviously it'll be clear in the notes. When I do Alt, and I press Alt and Shift, and I right click, can you see there's an option here called Copy as Path? So when I do that, and I go into Excel, and then I paste it, what I actually get is every file name in a separate cell. Okay, so I've now got my list of documents. Now I haven't, because I've actually got a list of documents with the whole path. So again, something else that was suggested by several people was using text to columns. So if I'm here, and I'm going to do the whole section, okay, and I go off to text to columns. So again, I know a lot of you will have used this, but obviously what I'm doing here is taking each separate part of this and separating it into a separate cell. So I know it's delimited. Each section that I want is delimited by the backslash. So I'm going to select delimited and I go off to the next one. It doesn't matter if I put leave tabs in there because there aren't any tabs, so that's fine. But I'm actually going to say, okay, let's do other, and it's split by the backslash. And you can see the minute I've done that, it split it off into the separate cells that it needs. And then when I click on next, says what's the format you want? Well, this is mainly text, so it doesn't really matter. This is where I'm putting it. And when I click on finish, you'll see I now have that list. And in fact, if I do this, you'll see it very clearly. Oops. Okay. So obviously now, if I just want the names of the documents, then I can delete those, and now I've got it. Okay, so you can imagine doing that if the list, you know, there was 170 files in the folder or something, how quick and easy that would be to manipulate. Okay, so that's text to columns. That's really, again, I think a very useful thing. We all have our favorite formulas as well. You know, we've all got sort of you know, people like using if tests and they like doing this and so on. I have one, but only because I really like the name. But it's the opposite of what we've just done, where we've split cells up. What we're doing here is we're kind of putting things back together again. So if I have last name and first name here, what I'm going to use is a formula called concatenate. And you'll see what happens, and brings up the name. Okay. And then obviously what I want to do now is I want the first name to be first, and then the last name obviously to come afterwards. So I'm going to pick up the first cell, and then you separate each section by a comma. And obviously what I might want to do now is have a space in between those. So again, I'm going to do that as text, just a space, another comma, okay, and then I'm going to pick up my surname, and when I press return, hey presto, I've got Mary's name. And of course, if I use my double click, it's filled the whole section in for me. Okay. One thing I would stress with this, of course, is if I now copy this, say I wanted to copy it to a different sheet. Okay. Just going to create a new one. I'm obviously going to have a problem because it's not, I'm copying the formula. So don't forget, in that instance, what I could do is do a paste special and actually copy the values instead. Okay. And then I know I've got that as text rather than those formulas. Okay, any questions on that? Any comments or anything? Angela, anything useful?
Just to mute myself. A couple of people have been saying flash fill. I'm reading out flash fill doing the same as concatenate. So it's one to experiment and try with. If you...
Yeah, I suppose effectively it does. But what I find useful with concatenate is you're absolutely right. Okay, flash fill would do it if it was just the names. But if you actually had to put together maybe addresses and maybe they were slightly different and maybe there was some had one, it is useful, and I have used it quite a lot. I've used it in place of flash fill as well as using flash fill in other circumstances, but I absolutely get that you know, in that instance flash fill would have just done the job. Okay, it's partly because I just love the name of it. I have to be really honest there, you know. So any others? Any other comments?
I just want to pass on, Fiona explicitly asked me to say they're loving the session and got quite a few people getting all excited about various things that you're showing. So
oh, good, excellent. That's really good to hear. I did a short training session yesterday with 3 people, and they all went, "Ooh!" And I said, "That's the nicest sound a trainer can hear." And I bet there's a few trainers on today that would agree with that. It's lovely when people are appreciative of it. So excellent, good. Well, anybody have any other hints to share, Angela, that we hadn't covered?
oh well,
I've got a couple more, but if there's anything really special, that would be really good.
the people are sharing their favorite keyboard shortcuts that are related to what you're showing.
Yeah.
So there's quite a lot going on in the chat.
Excellent, good. Well, I will make sure that we go through that, obviously, and you know, sort of show that as well. So that's fine. A couple of other things. So it's always so difficult with something like this to know exactly how long it's going to take. But I also like using the status bar as well. And again, I'm sure that an awful lot of you use this, but being able to just do a quick sum or an average on my figures, when if I highlight all of those, I mean, I've got them all turned on just so that you can see how it works. But you can see now, rather than having to write a formula for that, if somebody says really quickly, you know, what's the total then, or what's the average, I can actually tell them without having to do a formula. So again, that's something I quite like. Nice sort of simple ones. The other thing that somebody mentioned before was this idea of where you save an Excel spreadsheet when you close it down. Because don't forget that when you do that, I close this down here, okay, and then open it up again, it actually comes back in the same place. So it is worth remembering that. It is worth remembering that because if you actually want somebody to use it, you are often better off to make sure that you press Control Home, go back to the beginning before you do that. Okay. Again, it's not a big thing. It's just quite a useful thing. Obviously, don't forget about things like your, and again, most people know this, but just in case, your print titles and your freeze panes. So again, if I've got a really long list, being able to freeze the top row, and obviously then when I scroll down, those appear, and you can do the same with your column names if you need to. Okay. Sorry, my throat's got really dry and I don't know why. Excellent. Okay. Oh, the other thing that I quite like, and I do use quite a lot, I'm trying to think of whether I can do it on this one. Or maybe on this one. Actually, I do want to here for a second. Okay. Well, if I just to show you again, okay, I am going to. Oh, I can do it on. Sorry, bear with me a second. I'll do it on this one. What I can do is, I think again, it's something that a lot of people do use, but not as often as maybe they could do. When you have something that you need to, we know we can sort this. Said that's absolutely fine. We know we can, if it's got color assigned to it, we can sort by the color, and that includes things like highlighting and stuff as well. So that's really useful. But what you also can do is you can set up a custom sort. So what I mean by that is when I click on sort, it allows me to put in, if you like, my own options. So if I don't want it to be litigation, family, employment, but for some reason, I think this is quite important when you're doing things like, you might want, I'm trying to think of something like a breakfast, lunch and dinner. Okay, well, you may not want them to go breakfast, dinner, lunch. You might want them to be the other way around. So whenever you sort it, all the breakfast items would be at the top. You can see I always talk about food. All the lunch ones would be next, and so on. So what you would do is you click on options. No, you don't. Sorry, bear with me. Okay. Sorry, here. So instead of just doing A to Z or Z to A, what I would do is I would do a custom list. And I think what's really important immediately is you've obviously got some in there already. If I sort Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it will sort it in that order, and the same with the months and the year. Okay, you can see the example I've used before is around food as well. So I'm obviously keen on that. Right, I'm going to click on add. Okay, and I'll do that breakfast, lunch and dinner, even though I haven't got any. It doesn't really matter because actually, no, I won't. I'll do the other one, I think. Let me just bear with. Okay. Right. So what I can do here is I'm going to do it by family. Okay. I'm going to do litigation. So they're only just swapped around slightly. You do have to spell it right, by the way. Litigation and employment. Okay. And I'm going to add it. Okay. Click on OK. So now, if I say I actually want to sort it by department, you can see it's working, okay? It will use this custom order to actually do it, okay? So again, once you've set that up, it will be there for you to use whenever you need it. So again, if there's anything that needs to be in a specific order, it's obviously a much easier way to do it, okay? Good, okay. I'm going to call it a day in a second because I feel like I'm kind of making things up now. But are there anybody got any questions, or were there any other comments, or anything else? I'm going to go and have a look at the chat myself for a second. Sorry, Claire, how did you get that? You clicked on options, did you? Yes. So when you're in the sort, obviously you click in this section here. When you go into sort, sorry, you don't, it's actually under the order, right, and then you get custom list, you create it, and then it will be there for you to use whenever you need to. Okay. Super. Yeah. Okay. And again, that's where I think, a lot of us sort of forget that you can actually do it with months of the year as well, and days of the week, that where you actually got a whole list of what happened on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you can actually sort it by that so it goes into the right order. Okay. Super, thank you. No, that's fine. Cool. Yeah, any others?
So just looking at the chat.
Yeah,
Sarah just put down you can use group to hide rows and columns that you hide regularly.
Yeah.
Nice little time saver.
Yeah. And there are some really, anybody, and I know there's a few people on this call who do like doing it, and I do as well. There are some really good keystrokes that, you know, I mean, not just things like Control-Shift-L, but let's see if I can remember. There's not Control.
Do you find you do keystrokes on autopilot, so you don't actually know what your fingers are doing, you just know you use them?
I know, absolutely, yeah. But there's a few really useful ones, and again, depending, you know, I always think with a keystroke, it depends what you do. You know, if you're using filtering and lists and things a lot, there's a few that would be really useful for that. Otherwise, there's sort of other options that you know, become useful in other areas. So
They said Control D for copy cells above. I like Control R, copy to the right as well.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't see if there's any. Yep. Okay. That's actually, Fiona, that's a really good point, actually. If you do want somebody wants to be assisted with something in Excel, make sure you've got that cell selected. It's obviously going to be easier to find it, but yeah. Okay. Can I do a quick fill formula again? Yes, Sharmila. Okay. So is that I mean, there's obviously quite a few things that you can do. I'll do that. What I did for that was I pressed Alt and plus, which gave me the equal sum. And then when you want to copy a formula down, you just double click on the fill handle, it will do it. Okay. Obviously, we know that we can do a series like that as well. When I'm on numbers 1 to 2, okay, and obviously I can drag that. I get a consecutive numbers. And if I did 5 to 10, I'd get 5, 10, 15, and so on. Okay. Good. Oh yes, F4. Believe me, F4 was, which is what I said, it's really useful for that. But of course, the great thing about F4 is it applies absolutely everywhere. So in PowerPoint, in Excel, in Word, it's repeating the last thing. And I have a bit of a pet thing in Word about people using the format painter to when they've put a style on, because obviously you could take other bits of the style, direct formatting or whatever with you. So I tend to say to people that if you apply the style and then use the F4 key where you need it, then you're only applying the style and not taking anything else. Okay. What are you, Claire, I'm assuming you mean you don't tell them about format painter. Yeah, but you know, people find things like that, don't they? And it's just trying to persuade them to do it a slightly different way. Yeah. Okay. So many keystrokes that we all like. I love it. So it goes back to, you know, the initial days when we didn't have a mouse, but some of you won't remember that. So, okay, brilliant. Well, I hope it was helpful and that you enjoyed it. That's at least everybody found one thing that they didn't know.
Thanks to everyone for contributing via the chat. It's really good to know we're hitting the spot and covering things that are really going to add value to everyone.
Yeah, I think we'll have to do a Word one soon. So definitely. Yep, good. Super. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much, everybody, and thanks for joining us. And as I said, we'll be in touch with the quick reference guide as soon as we can. Okay, excellent.